Hi, welcome back to NDG Live. I'm your host, Jackie Hardy. I am so excited that you joined us as I am speaking with Yaegel Welch, who is in the history-making production of To Kill a Mockingbird. We speak with Yaegel about his role as Tom Robinson in this masterpiece. If you are in the DFW area, you can see To Kill a Mockingbird performing at the Bass Performance Hall from September 26th through October 1st. In fact, this is the first play in the Broadway at the Bass series presented by PNC Bank. Thank you again for watching, and we hope you enjoy this conversation. I appreciate you allowing us some time to speak with me. We are minority owned and operated publication. Yes. And so we always are excited when we can interview some of our actors that look like us, right?
I heard what you're saying. Yes, yes.
That's right. That's right. And I have to tell you, I feel very honored too that I'm talking to a Morehouse man.
Yes.
Yeah, I was reading your bio. Yeah, and it's just you're so accomplished. I know you've done a lot of national tours and TV work, but if you don't mind, do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit of your background and kind of what led you to the arts?
The arts, I think it was sort of like a progression of being like a sort of extroverted child with lots of energy and lots of creative ideas. But when I was in high school, I went to high school in the Los Angeles County area, a place called John Wesley North High School. And I saw the theater department, but there were no kids of color. And because of that, I felt intimidated to go. But one day I took a class and I said, oh, no, I think I want to do this. And so I asked the teacher if she wouldn't mind, my high school drama teacher, Michelle Grotness. I asked her if she wouldn't mind me auditioning for the advanced class. And I did whatever I could to get into that class. And then from then on, I started skipping football practice and going to play practice. I started skipping track practice and going to play practice. And when it came time to graduate, I said, well, I don't know, how do you do this? And I saw that Morehouse had a major in drama at the time that was housed at Spelman College. And so I ended up studying there and getting what's called a BA in theater, which is a well-rounded sort of education on all aspects of theater. And I was certain that I wanted to be an actor and not a lighting designer or a director or a costume designer. I knew that I wanted to act. And so I went and got an MFA from Brandeis University.
Awesome.
And then after that, I wanted to specify my area of study because I thought I wanted to do Shakespeare and classical works. And so I went to the George Washington University Academy for Classical Acting, Shakespeare Theater in DC. And I ended up, while I was there, I ended up going to see August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean. It was closing on a random week when I was in school there. And when I got there and I saw that production and I learned that all the same tools I'm using in classical acting for Shakespeare and Moliere, I could use in August Wilson. And these stories were directly related to me. So I figured out that I could translate what I was learning in classical studies into plays that were centered around people who look like me and come from places I know or where my family knew. And that became a really important mission. Yeah.
That is incredible, Yaegel. And I love the journey and just how it organically kind of unfolded for you. That is really cool. Yeah, and that's the beauty of the arts too, because oftentimes, you get put in a box and you may not want to pursue sports or some of the kind of traditional things that you usually pursue at that age. And so I love that the arts give you those opportunity from a mom who has art theater kids.
Okay.
And it produces wonderful people like yourself, brilliant talent like you. And so kind of discussing your role, I know you are playing Tom Robinson in the upcoming production To Kill a Mockingbird. And I know you get asked this question a lot, but if you'll indulge me, kind of what what about the character is challenging as far as the part? Like, can you kind of speak to that? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. The challenges are you have to, explore parts of society that we would rather forget, but need to fight hard to remember.
Amen.
Because it's easier to forget it. And so to have to like relive it on an ongoing basis, that always is going to be a
Yeah.
challenge because it's not a
Sure.
fun time.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah, the period.
um,
Yeah.
we're talking about the Jim Crow South in the 1930s when Black men were being hung left and right, and having to explore that world
Sure.
is emotionally and psychologically taxing. Where it gets fulfilling is that I know that this story needs to be told, and I know that people need to see um, the experience that Tom Robinson was experiencing and empathize with it. And so it really does impassion me to bring my all every night. Even if
Sure.
I'm tired, I will find the energy on that night because this is my way.
Mhm.
I could be gone tomorrow. I can still say that I'm leaving something behind, that I did something to try
Sure.
to help,
Absolutely.
even with my last days. And so I get empowered by it. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there aren't challenging nights or moments.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and you kind of touched on that To Kill a Mockingbird, quite frankly, is helping to foster some of the conversations, that
Mhm.
we need to be having right now about racism, right?
Mhm.
And I know right now, unfortunately, you're seeing there's a kind of a agenda to kind of sanitize and even in
Mhm.
some respects completely erode the truth of history. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I love what you said. There's a significance for right now for this play. Would you agree? Yeah, to be on stage.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because like I always think that To Kill a Mockingbird is essentially the story about how a white family encounters racism, and particularly a young white girl encounters racism for a real way for the first time in her life where she can actually comprehend some of it, because even then she still can't comprehend it all.
Right.
uh, I've been Black all my life and I didn't really understand racism until
Exactly. I hear you.
I was quite frankly much older.
Sure.
But I think that I don't know that we're trying to get as many. We are trying to get some Black people to understand racism
Mhm.
from an African American lens, but I
Yeah.
think majority culture, i.e., white people, are people who may not be Black or understand the story. I think them having a tale that allows them to come in
Mm.
and see it from their lens that actually empathizes with them. It's a tool to help the cause as well.
Mm. That's good.
Um,
Mm.
like you need your pencils and your markers,
Yeah, sure.
you know,
Absolutely. It's a
and
lesson
so
for us all.
yeah, there's a lesson for
That's
us
right.
all. So
That's good.
I stand with it being needed, and if this story empowers so many people, for
Yeah,
so many decades to become
absolutely.
lawyers and want to fight the good fight, then I have to stand with it because it's certainly not contributing to a negative
That's great.
impact to the struggle of civil rights and
Amen.
equality.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and that's the beauty of the arts because it,
Mhm.
it gives a platform to promote that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had read, I believe it was like in the Buffalo News that you were quoted as saying that this particular play has transformed your life and it's even redefined what your purpose is as it pertains to the arts. That is
Mhm.
such a powerful statement, Yaegel. Can you kind of speak a little bit to that or expound? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like oftentimes when we do work, sometimes we can just be artists for hire, meaning, oh, they hired me. I'll go do that. I'll go do that. But I think this is one of the first times on such a large platform where I've gotten to do something that's so socially relevant. And like I
Sure.
said, it gives me a very public purpose that I get to stand behind and impact the world on, impact
Yeah.
America on, and 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 speak on some things that are very, very personal
Mhm.
to me,
Sure.
very,
That's
very personal to I think a lot of Black people. Like there was
mhm.
nothing like when and not that this was a good thing, but it did happen, and we have to acknowledge it when George Floyd was murdered. You know, we, of course, we witnessed people try to say his past and,
Yeah.
well, he was on this or he did that or,
Change the
uh,
narrative.
yeah, it's like,
Exactly.
what's that got to do with what we just saw?
That's right.
What does
Amen.
that have to do with what we just saw? That man did absolutely, I mean, he did have counterfeit money, but he was begging
No
for them
reason.
to
That's right.
take his knee off of his neck,
That's
and
right.
they didn't. And I would have to say, if that was happening to a white child, I
Mm,
don't think he could have kept his knee on his neck that long, or
right.
it would have went that way.
Absolutely. The outcome would have been totally different
It
for
would have been
sure.
totally
Yeah.
different.
And history speaks to that. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. No, you are so right. No, I love that. And it's not about the applause for you that you're intentional. Yeah. In wanting, yeah, to use your platform to speak to these social ills. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
really.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna say too, I mean, it's an emotionally kind of taxing, I'm sure at times, as far as the role that you play, and you're very, I'm sure, emotionally invested in it.
Mhm.
How do you mentally prepare for that? I got the privilege to see it back in May when you guys stopped in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you were brilliant. There is an instant empathy that you bring to that character, and that I think is so needed. And I have to tell you, as a Southern gal, you had the accent on point.
Oh, God, thank
Everything
you.
was just great. Yeah, but how do you mentally prepare? Yeah, for this role.
Like there are some things that I think, uh, if you've been Black in America, um,
Hmm.
and you come from a certain level in society. Like, I didn't grow up in a rich family.
Sure.
I didn't grow up sheltered from injustices that were happening.
Mm,
I remember, not to date myself, but I remember the crack epidemic of the '80s. I remember
yeah.
Rodney King
Wow.
in the '90s. I
Yeah.
remember gang violence, the Crips and Bloods.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's so much of it that I have seen and witnessed, and some that I've actually experienced. And
Sure.
um,
Agree. Yeah.
I think the key to everything is um, empathizing and being honest.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have to, there's some things you have to imagine
Sure.
what
Yeah,
the horror
right.
is like.
There's not a whole
I
lot
don't
of
have to imagine.
that's
It's
right.
like, oh
Yeah,
no, I know that. I know what that
exactly.
is, to be terrified of the
Yeah,
cops, to be
sure.
terrified of the legal system.
Yeah.
Um, on so many fronts. Like,
Mm.
no, I haven't been to court or accused of rape or,
Sure.
uh,
But
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 I
no,
know
but there's personal experiences you
there's
can draw
personal
from.
experience
That's right,
and
because racism
experiences.
is racism. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter. That's it. Yeah, what the crime is. No, that's powerful. I totally agree. As an African American woman, I totally
Hmm.
understand. But yeah, but it certainly you embody it as your own, and you feel that, as someone that was blessed with the privilege to be a spectator of your performance. Yeah. And do you have a favorite scene in the play that you like? And if so, what is that and why?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd have to say the one that I'm in.
I heard that.
I love that Aaron Sorkin, because, like, again,
Yeah,
there's this whole journey to getting to the scene where you get to learn what actually happened that night.
exactly. It's a build up.
Um,
Yeah.
and and I love the build up to it. You have all this zany stuff that's happening, then you go back into the courtroom, and then by the time we start the second act, you get this dose of, like, realism, and just truth, and it's like a gut punch. And I love to get to be a part of that.
Absolutely.
But if I take the uh, if I can be unbiased, I would also say I love the scene with Calpurnia and Atticus when they first meet in the kitchen. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
I do.
it's just so fun watching,
Yeah. Their
somebody
dialogue.
be mad and somebody
That's
try to prod the truth out of them, and seeing
right.
their relationship. You often didn't see
Sure.
that relationship, particularly with people of different ethnicities
That's right.
or races in the 1930s. So it was
Yeah.
nice to see um, something that looked um, just
Yeah.
familial.
That's it.
All right.
Yeah. There was a comfort to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just their
yeah.
dynamic. Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. That friendship. I agree. No,
And
that's great.
funny.
Yeah, it is. It's very much funny. And that is another thing. You're dealing with a lot of course, serious subject matters, but there is some levity there with comedy to kind of
Mhm.
lighten some of that up. Yeah, I agree because that's life, right?
It is like,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's attributed to Aaron Sorkin.
yes, his writing is
He
brilliant.
has such a great grasp on writing these courtroom
Absolutely.
dramas, but he also knows, how to weave in bits of joy,
Yeah,
just
that's
to keep the audience
absolutely
connected,
engaged.
and,
Yeah.
and not hit you so heavy that
Exactly.
that you're
That's
drawn
right.
back. And so it
Mhm.
humanizes the
Absolutely.
people, and because every family in the South during that time, wasn't necessarily that kind of racist. Uh,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
and I'll monitor
Right.
my words.
I know. I hear you. Have to self-edit.
Right.
Yes. But
Um,
no, I totally feel you on it.
like they weren't, they did have relationships that looked different. Everybody
Sure.
wasn't spitting on, every black person
Right.
they saw,
Sure.
and like
Not to demonize all.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
you know.
Sure.
Um, so it's nice that
Yeah,
he nuanced it. He
that's
made
true.
the relationships nuance, and even the different types of racist white people that you see in this play. There's a nuance to them, and they're a different
That's
level.
yeah.
Um, and so it was it's just really creative and clever for him to do
Mhm.
that, because now the
Sure.
whole community seems like a community where people, although are living in the same circumstances, they are reacting to it differently.
Sure. Absolutely. And because I mean, we of course touched on that there's still a lot we have to do, right, with respect
Mhm.
to racial injustice. I
Mhm.
would love to pose this question to you because again, we primarily our audience is minority community. And I know many of them can relate when I ask this. How do you personally, Yaegel, reconcile, living with the reality that we haven't really moved the needle as far as we like to see it,
Mhm.
especially from an African American perspective on this subject? How do you reconcile knowing that, but also maintaining or holding to a hope of a better future? How do you personally kind of reconcile that?
You know, I do have to look. I believe it's Maya Angelou who talked about being the hope and the dream of a slave.
Wow,
Um,
it's
and,
good.
no, we haven't moved quickly, but
Yes,
we
that's good.
have moved, because when I look at the opportunities that I
Love
have,
that.
I look at the kind of education I've been able to get,
Sure,
when I look at the kind of experience, when I look at the fact that I get to pursue a life as an actor, you
sure.
know,
Yeah.
um, when I look at, who I see, like I went to Morehouse, and at Morehouse and Spelman,
Mhm.
I mean, I can't tell you how many doctors and lawyers
Yes,
and
sure.
corporate, businessmen and
Yeah,
that I know, principals
sure.
that I know. And so, no, it hasn't moved quite up to the, um, I guess, the top of where equality should be, the
Sure.
apex of where equality should be, but
It's
it has
good.
moved, and we are climbing. I do see this, and I can stand by this. There are people trying to take us back down and
Yeah,
take us back
sure.
currently,
Sure. Sure.
but it doesn't mean that we haven't climbed. And there's
That's
one thing
good.
that was said in an Arthur Fugard play. I think it's My Children, My Africa. He says, change happens slowly and swift. No, Lorraine Hansberry, Raisin in the Sun, Asagai.
Oh, yes. I love
He
Lorraine
says, change
Hansberry.
happens
Yeah.
slowly and swiftly.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's slow, and then sometimes it's
It's
fast. The Barack
good.
Obama years, it seemed
That's right.
fast, and
Yeah.
then it slowed down.
Yeah.
But because I
That's
know that, because one, I don't believe we live in an America full of people who agree with racism. I
sure.
believe we live in an America full of people who don't acknowledge it or see it because they don't experience it.
Sure.
But but I don't think
Yeah.
that. So I'm hopeful.
Hopeful. Yeah.
Hope.
Dreams eternal.
Huh?
it springs eternal, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
you
Yeah,
have to, because if
that's it.
imagine if slaves gave up hope that they would never
Right.
not be slaves.
Exactly. No, I love
Like
that.
it's like you gotta say one day, and like,
Yeah.
they would sing, they would do stuff to encourage each other to stay alive, or
Yeah.
those slaves when they were on the Africans when they were on the slave ships. Imagine, like there
Sure.
are some who jumped and said, and I understand it. I
Yeah,
understand
sure.
why they chose to
Yeah,
jump, but I also understand the people who had the hope to say,
that's
well, we're
right.
going to see what's on the other side and we're going to figure that out too.
Person. Yeah,
Um,
so
and
good.
so yeah, I think hope.
Yeah,
Nobody said that life is
that's
easy
it.
in that
No,
way.
that's
I
right.
mean,
And
ideally, I hope
especially
it.
when it's change.
Right.
Right. Yeah, sure. No, and I love the quote that you gave of the great Lorraine Hansberry, because I love that no matter whatever this you are on the spectrum of change being swift or slow, change is happening.
It's
And
happening.
sometimes it's invisible, but
Mhm.
it's happening. Yeah.
It's
So
happening.
that's powerful. That is
Mhm.
powerful. Yeah. I tell you, you make Morehouse proud. I'm telling you. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
and I do want to ask you too, why should someone here in the DFW go and check this play out? Like what would be your message to them, and the message that you hope they leave with too, if they go and see it?
Ultimately, the message I hope they leave with is empathy. I hope they
Mm,
saying it doesn't matter if I'm a woman. I can stand for women's rights. It doesn't matter if I'm Islamic. I can stand against Islamophobia. Doesn't
yeah.
matter if I'm gay or straight or trans. I can support all these people in their struggles, because if I believe in justice to be happening, it's my
Mm,
duty as a citizen, as a human being, to say, hey, how can I do anything to help your cause? It doesn't
yeah.
have to necessarily relate to me and my experience directly. It relates to us as human beings.
Right.
Um, because I think that's how so many people can walk around, and they just why did it take cameras for the
Mm,
police to start getting checked? People knew it was happening,
yeah.
and I think if
Sure.
people can come witness something,
That's
I think particularly this production, they will garner a strong sense of empathy for a cause, and also see so many direct parallels to
mm,
what's been happening. I mean, you have George Floyd, you have Breonna Taylor, you have Trayvon Martin, you have those 10 older African American
right.
people who shot in Buffalo. Um,
Yes.
I mean, I could just
The
go.
list can go on
The
and
list
on.
can go
Absolutely.
on, and it's an
Sure.
epic, epic list. But to
Sure.
see that parallel, Harper Lee wrote this story in the late 1950s, published in the early 1960s. It's about a white girl in 1934. The same story is still happening in each point in time to this day.
That's
That's
right.
why I think people need to come. I think
That's
we need to
good.
rally behind. It's a revolution. And a
Yeah.
part of being a part of a
Absolutely.
revolution is supporting the
Yeah.
different groups and organizations, and whether it's an artistic group or a public advocacy group.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't come support it,
Yeah.
because it
Sure.
needs support. It needs to have, the more people come, the louder megaphone we have.
That's good. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's a community. It takes a
Yeah.
community to make this change. Um,
Absolutely.
the communities of all color.
Amen. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I certainly agree with you. There is a sensitivity that hopefully you leave with.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, especially because too much is given, much is required, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, that's great. And it's my kind of final question. It's silly because you a deep brother, and I love it. Your answers, they are, yeah. So this one indulge me a little bit. Do you have any like superstitions that you do? I always like to ask this to all the actors I get the privilege to interview, or like a little lucky charm thing that you do before you perform.
Oh my God. First of all, I'm a clown. Uh,
No,
yes, I am. Don't be fooled. Uh,
I love it.
Secondly, yeah, I'm a creature of habit. I almost do
Okay.
everything the exact same way,
Really?
in preparation. Like, there are things that I do
Okay.
that I don't. I, I do them from the heart, but I'm also afraid if I don't do them. Like,
I hear
I
you.
whenever I hear of a new person who has been sort of attacked unjustly by the law or who's been murdered or something like that, I say their names on
Really?
repeat before every show.
That's
And I add to the
awesome.
list as it grows,
Mm.
and I say their names before every scene. So that way I put
Mm.
their energy out there
Yeah,
because their
I
stories
love
are real.
Yeah,
Um, but what makes it
that's
silly is that like
incredible.
if it doesn't happen, I'm in like panic. If I
Sure,
oh
you're
wait,
like,
I
can't
gotta
go
do this
on.
part.
That's right.
Like the
Stop
grown,
production. That's it. I love that. No,
yeah.
that because you're humanizing, because in
Mhm.
this world with the 24-hour news cycle that we have going on, it's so easy to forget. And so
Mhm.
that's a sweet way that you're making sure you keep those names in the forefront of your mind and honoring them in the way that you are through your brilliant acting. I think that's incredible. It really is. And it has
Thank
been incredible talking to you.
oh, thank you.
I don't even need to say I wish you all the best because you already there.
Oh God, thank
Yeah,
you.
you are. You're soaring. I'm serious. When I was just doing a little research on you, I'm so excited for you, and so I won't say wish you the best. I was just gonna say break a leg.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
are welcome, and
Thank you.
you when you're here, get you some barbecue in Texas.
Well, look, you better believe it.
That's
And I'm gonna do
right.
some line dancing. Um,
Oh, I love it. You
yeah.
are. Yeah, you're gonna be in Fort Worth, so you're in a great spot for that.
Yeah. I said we go there. I said we gotta do some.
That's
And I
right.
love your maroon and white colors for your NDO live.
That's right.
Like,
You
is
know, I
that
know why. You better
I,
know it.
yes, yes.
I know it. Well, it has been a great pleasure meeting you, and I wish you all Godspeed as you continue in your career.
Thank you. I wish you the
You're
same.
so welcome. You take care.
Take
Bye
care, love.
bye. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed our conversation with the talented Yaegel T. Welch. You can check out his brilliant performance along with the other cast of To Kill a Mockingbird this upcoming week, starting September 26th through October 1st. You don't want to miss this brilliant masterpiece written by award winner Aaron Sorkin. Just head over to basshall.com for ticket information. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time.